Hey, glad to have you back at Vengeance Files. We appreciate every view and comment. Let us know what city or country you're watching from. We love hearing from our worldwide community. Now let's get into today's episode. Chapter 1, The Uninvited. Mason Blackwell stared at the message from his ex-wife Veronica, his jaw clenching tighter with each reread. The cool stone counter pressed against his palm as he leaned on it in his sleek kitchen. Christmas dinner at my parents' place at 6. Olivia isn't invited. She's too young for this adult gathering. You can come alone. Mason's eyes drifted to the open-concept living room, where his 17-year-old daughter hung handmade ornaments on the tree, each one a memory from her childhood. 17 was far from little. She was heading to college soon, had a perfect GPA, and volunteered at the neighborhood animal shelter. Mason knew exactly why Olivia was being kept out. Preston, Dawson, Veronica's new husband, didn't want any trace of Mason at what he now called his holiday celebration. "Are you okay, Dad?" Olivia asked, catching the look on his face. Mason eased into a smile. "Just work stuff," he said, pocketing his phone. He wasn't about to show her the message. Not now. At 42, Mason had built everything from the ground. Paz, a small trucking business passed down by his father, had turned into a multi-sector powerhouse. Logistics, storage, even real estate. He'd earned both trusted allies and bitter enemies along the way. Colleagues respected and feared him. Anyone who crossed him learned fast. Loyalty was everything. Betrayal, unforgivable. In 2 decades of building his empire, he'd cut out rivals, fired execs who leaked internal info, and dismantled former partners who broke faith with him. But none of it mattered as much as being Olivia's dad. When Veronica left him for Preston, his old friend and former partner, Mason fought like hell for custody, and he won. The split was brutal. Veronica tried to paint him as a heartless, career-obsessed man, but the court saw through it, especially when her year-long affair and constant absence from Olivia's life came to light. That night, once Olivia was asleep, Mason poured himself a couple fingers of bourbon and walked out onto the balcony, looking out over the Seattle skyline. The December chill hinted at snow in the air. As he took a sip, the decision settled in his mind. He wouldn't fight with Veronica about the invite. It would only stress Olivia. Instead, he picked up his phone and replied simply, "We won't be attending." Then he called Dominic Porter, his longtime friend and head of security. "Dom, I need you to start digging. Preston Dawson, find out everything. His accounts, his routines, his skeletons, especially any ties to the Winter family." Dominic didn't press for context. After 15 years working with me, he understood I never moved without purpose. "Consider it done. How far down do you want this to go?" I kept my eyes on the skyline, my voice low and sharp. No stone unturned. I'd held my tongue for 3 years. For Olivia. But leaving her out of the family Christmas? That was it. Veronica and Preston had just crossed the wrong man. They'd stirred up the version of me my enemies in business learned to fear. Chapter 2. Ghosts of Betrayal. 2 days later, I sat in my downtown office flipping through the file Dominic dropped on my desk. It was worse than I thought. Preston Dawson wasn't half as successful as he portrayed. His firm was leaking cash, barely held up by connections to his new father-in-law Harold Winters, an old money banker tied deep into Seattle's elite. But what caught my eye were the concealed gambling debts and frequent Vegas business trips with zero sign of Veronica. The real stunner came buried halfway in. Proof the affair hadn't started 3 years ago, but 5, right when Preston and I were still co-developing properties. "Got something else?" Dominic said, sliding a second folder over. I flipped it open. Photos of Veronica, with my old partner Lloyd Reeves, 6 months before our divorce. Back then, Lloyd had tried to squeeze me out of the firm. That backfired when I discovered his play and took his assets apart piece by piece. They were in it. Together, I said aloud. Veronica, Preston, and Lloyd. They were coming for my company. Dominic gave a grim nod. "And it gets worse. That trust you set up for Olivia. Veronica tried accessing it last year. The bank shut her down. You're still sole trustee until Olivia's 21. Cold rage surged through me. This wasn't just cheating. She had conspired to dismantle everything I had built, including my daughter's future. That evening, when Olivia got home from work, I decided it was time to stop shielding her. "Your mum texted about Christmas dinner," I told her as we prepped a meal. "She invited me, but said you weren't. Adults only." Olivia paused, knife hovering above the vegetables. "Oh." I said no, for both of us. She gave a short nod, her eyes misty. "It's Preston, isn't it? He's always hated me." "Preston's feelings are irrelevant," I said. "We'll have our own Christmas with people who actually give a damn about you." Olivia offered a faint smile. "It's okay, Dad. I'm used to Mom picking him over me." She hesitated. "There's something else? She called last week asking about your new project in Bellevue. Said it was for financial planning, but it felt off." I stayed calm, though my stomach turned. "Thanks for telling me. Did you say anything?" "No, I don't know your business anyway." She shrugged. "You always said trust has to be earned." For a moment, anger faded into pride. She was strong, decent, mine. "Christmas will be here," I said. "We'll invite Grandma Rose, Uncle Leo, and anyone else you want. People worthy of your time." That night, I called Dominic again. "I want full surveillance on Harold Winters, every banking move he makes. Hand pull all the data on the Bellevue development backers. Someone's leaking info. I need to find out who." "You think Veronica's dad's part of this too?" Mason let out a cold laugh. "Harold Winters has been circling my company for 10 years. Of course he's in on it. The real question is, how far in?" After ending the call, Mason stepped into his home, office, and opened the safe. Behind the stacks of legal files and cash sat a slim black notebook, his personal safety net. He'd been tracking dirt on business rivals, politicians, and partners for years, not to blackmail them, but to protect himself. He turned to the section marked Harold Winters and scanned notes on old misdeeds, an old harassment settlement buried under NDAs, sketchy loan dealings. It wasn't going to cut it, not for what Mason was planning now. His phone buzzed, a text from Veronica. "Reconsider Christmas. My parents want to see you." Mason's smile was sharp and bitter. Of course they did. With Preston's firm tanking, and Bellevue set to blow up in value, they wanted back into his life. He didn't answer. Instead, he called his lawyer, his advisor, and others who'd help him execute the plan. By midnight, the outline of his retaliation was clear. Calculated, thorough, brutal. Just the way Mason Blackwell did things. Chapter 3. The Architect of Vengeance. Before sunrise, Mason walked into his office. His assistant, Lydia Nakamura, was already there with coffee and the folders he'd asked for. "Here's the full Bellevue investor list," she said, handing it over. "And your ex called the legal team 3 times yesterday." Mason nodded. Lydia had been by his side for over a decade and was one of the few people he trusted completely. She'd turned down multiple offers from rivals, including a big one during Lloyd Reeves's attempted takeover. "I also have something on the other issue," she added, setting down a thinner folder. "Just like you thought, the Winters family is leveraged to the edge. Harold's bank is under federal watch for sketchy lending, and most of their wealth is tied to that bank. Preston's investment firm lost 3 big accounts last quarter. They're running on fumes." Mason flipped through the contents, face tightening. They were running scared. That's why they were pushing to play nice again. Lydia hesitated. "One more thing, your daughter's college account, the one under Veronica's name, not the trust, it's gone. Transferred offshore last month." Mason felt fury burn through him. That fund was created during the divorce to show good faith, $250,000 just for Olivia's future. Veronica had full control, but she'd crossed a line. "Get Dominic and my lawyer here, now." Within 60 minutes, Mason's office became a war room. Daniel Fitzgerald, his ruthless legal counsel, sifted through the numbers while Dominic updated him on surveillance. "Preston's been to Vegas 4 times lately," Dominic said. "Lost big. He owes some serious people $500 million. The college fund," Daniel added. "She had legal access, technically. It's disgusting but not criminal unless we can prove she intended to defraud." Mason slammed his fist on the desk. "She stole from our daughter. Make her pay." Daniel nodded. "There may be something. The divorce papers say the money's strictly for school. If we prove it went elsewhere, we can file for contempt, maybe even damages. Do it, Mason said, and block any remaining funds if that's doable. As his staff moved out to carry out the orders, Mason turned toward the window, eyes scanning the skyline of a city he had helped shape. Snow was drifting down, layering Seattle in a false sense of calm. His phone rang. Veronica. He let it buzz for a second, then picked up. Mason. Her voice dripped with charm, a sound that once drew him in but now registered as calculated. I was thinking maybe we could talk about Christmas. My folks are hoping to see you, maybe toss around a few business ideas. Nice timing, he said coolly, especially since you made it clear our daughter's not welcome. Don't be dramatic, Veronica huffed. Olivia gets that these adult get-togethers aren't her scene. It'd also give us a chance to talk about her plans. College isn't cheap. The nerve of her nearly made him laugh. She had already emptied Olivia's college fund, and now she was acting like she cared about the cost. I've got other plans, he replied evenly. Mason, come on. Preston thinks the Bellevue project might be a good deal for Dad. Can't we just be polite for one night? Polite? He repeated, his voice a low edge. You mean like raiding Olivia's college fund? That kind of polite? The quiet that followed said it all. I have no idea what you're referring to, Veronica finally said, shaky. You do. And I also know you, Preston, and your father are short on cash, and now you think I'm your way out. Here's a tip. Harold's sketchy loan records are already raising eyebrows. The feds are starting to ask questions. He ended the call before she could stammer a response. Then he rang his banker. Theodore, I need to speed some things up. How fast can we wrap up Bellevue property buys? The east section? Still in talks. All of them. Lock down everything in the area. That's a bold move. You'll have to offer well above value to do that fast. Make it happen. Also, contact every investor working with Preston Dawson. Pitch them an 8% guaranteed return if they shift to our new real estate company. Mason, that borders on hostile takeover. It's business, Mason said flatly. And Theodore, this stays airtight. Anyone who leaks a word is done for good. That night, Mason and Olivia started a new Christmas ritual. They ordered her favorite takeout and watched festive movies while talking through her college options. He didn't bring up the missing fund. She had enough on her plate after her mom turned her away. You know, Olivia said during a pause, in the movie, I don't think I want to go to Mom's on Christmas Eve either. Is that okay? Mason looked at her, gentle. Of course. Can I ask why? Olivia toyed with her sleeve. Last time I was there, I heard Preston and Grandpa Winters saying something about using you. They didn't know I was nearby. Preston said they needed to leverage Mason's resources while they could. It felt slimy. Mason felt a surge of pride and steel in his chest. You never have to go anywhere that makes you feel off. And thank you for telling me. After she went to sleep, Mason placed one final call to Victor Hargrove, an old contact who operated in Seattle's shadows, skilled in collecting intel through unspoken means. I need the full file on Preston Dawson's gambling losses, Mason said. Names, numbers, how he collects, and his Vegas network, I want all of it. That's a risky move, Victor cautioned. Some of the people he owes don't do polite conversations. That's the idea, Mason said. I need the most unpredictable, aggressive one he owes. Outside, snow drifted quietly, while Mason Blackwell put the final touches on his revenge blueprint. By Christmas, the Winters family and Preston Dawson would realize just how deeply they'd messed up by crossing him and wounding his daughter. Kicking Olivia out of Christmas dinner was about to ignite something far bigger than they could imagine. Chapter 4. Cards on the Table. 3 days before Christmas, Mason sat in a private lounge across from a man called Russo. They were downtown in an upscale club, quiet and away from prying eyes. Russo wore a suit that cost a fortune, but it didn't hide the danger in his presence. He worked collections for certain Vegas operations that didn't use banks or lawyers. $500,000, Russo said, handing over a folder. Dawson's ducked me for weeks. My guys are done waiting. Mason flipped through the debt agreement signed in Preston's frantic handwriting. What if someone bought this debt? Russo arched an eyebrow. That's not how this works. These aren't bonds. I'll pay in full plus 20% for your trouble, Mason replied, calmly pushing forward an envelope. No paper trail. And why do that, Mr. Blackwell? Let's just say Preston Dawson and I aren't done yet. Russo flipped open the envelope, counting the cash. My people don't sell debts. They like to collect, with interest and a point to prove. I get it, Mason nodded. In fact, I'd like to use your methods on my schedule. Russo grinned slowly as it clicked. You don't want to erase the debt. You want control over how it's enforced. We can work with that. Russo kept the envelope for a price and certain guarantees. By the time Mason walked out, he legally owned Preston Dawson's gambling debt and had arranged exactly when that debt would come crashing down, right after the holidays. That afternoon, he met with Theodore Alvarez, his banker, who had updates ready. We've locked down 90% of the Bellevue deals, Theodore said. The last few will follow when they see what their neighbors got. And Preston's investors? 7. Are pulling out, switching their money to your firm. That's around 60% of his managed assets. Mason nodded. And the Winter family properties? Theodore passed over another document. The shell company just finalized the buyout of 3 out of 5 buildings owned by Winter's Holdings. They don't suspect you. It looks like foreign capital. Good. What about the rest? The Fed's banking regulators got our anonymous tip. They're sending auditors to Harold Winters on January 3rd. Mason leaned back, fingers pressed together. In just 72 hours, he'd set off a chain reaction designed to break the people who broke him. Preston would lose his clients and face collectors. Harold would deal with the government and lose his grip on prime properties Mason now owned. And Veronica? She'd watched the fallout and realized far too late that she'd backed the wrong man. That night, Mason's phone lit up with a message from her. Mason, don't be rash. My parents are hosting key business guests for Christmas. Your presence would be helpful. We can talk about Olivia's college fund. He showed the message to Olivia, who sat beside him tying ribbons on gifts for their Christmas celebration. She's still asking you to come, just without me, Olivia said, voice quiet despite her effort to sound fine. Yes, and apparently I'm meant to play host for her parents' corporate friends. Mason kept his voice casual, but there was steel in his gaze. I've already said no, twice. Olivia put down the scissors in her hand. Dad, can I ask you something? Did Mom really take the money saved for my college? Mason paused, then gave a small nod. Yes, I found out recently. But don't worry, your future's safe. I've created a new trust in your name that no one else can touch once you turn 18. Olivia's eyes welled with tears. Why does she hate me so much? Mason wrapped her in a hug. She doesn't hate you. She's just selfish. Some people simply aren't capable of loving anyone more than they love themselves. As he held his daughter close, Mason's determination sharpened. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was about justice for a daughter let down by her own mother. The next morning, Dominic showed up at Mason's place with urgent news. Preston tried to get access to restricted information on the Bellevue project, he said. He reached out to 3 of your managers, offering bribes. Did anyone bite? No. Your team held strong. But he's burning bridges all over town. Word is his company's only weeks from going broke. Mason's smile was ice cold. Speed up the investor pullout. I want the firm gutted by Christmas Eve. Dominic nodded. Already underway, but there's more. Veronica went to her father's bank yesterday and tried to get a second mortgage on the old house, the one she kept in the divorce. Is that legal? Yes. Her name's the only one on the deed. But she got denied. Seems the bank flagged Harold. Winter's loans for closer inspection after someone dropped a tip. Now any deal tied to him gets extra scrutiny. Mason let out a dry laugh. So they're already scrambling for money. Perfect. Later that afternoon, Mason got a call he didn't expect. Harold Winters. Mason, the older man, greeted him with fake cheer. It's been a while. Thought I'd reach out and see if you might join us for Christmas dinner. Mason stayed composed. Surprised to hear from you directly. Did Veronica send you to get me there? Well, family should be together at Christmas, Harold said, clearly trying too hard. And I figured we could talk shop a little. I've been hearing some buzz about your Bellevue project. That's a specific mention, Mason replied. especially considering your son-in-law's attempts to pay off my employees for inside info on it." Harold hesitated. "I wasn't aware of that," his cheerful tone fading. "But to be frank, Mason, we'd all benefit from letting go of the past. The market's rough, and collaborations could—" "Let me stop you right there," Mason cut in. "There won't be any partnerships. Not now. Not ever. Your daughter shut mine out of your family Christmas. That tells me all I need to know about your priorities. Now listen here," Harold snapped. "That was Veronica's decision, not mine. And honestly, it's trivial compared to what's on the table. Nothing tied to my daughter is ever trivial. Goodbye, Harold." As Mason hung up, Lydia walked in with another report. "Sir, all our Bellevue zoning permits just got the green light. We're cleared to start in January. What about the neighboring lots under Winters Holdings?" "The Shell Company has acquired 4 of the 5. The last one closes tomorrow." Mason gave a tight nod. "Schedule demolition for December 26th. I want Harold Winters to come back from Christmas dinner to find his properties getting flattened." "That's bold," Lydia said, keeping her tone strictly professional. "It's necessary," Mason said. "And Lydia, make sure everyone who turned down Preston's bribes gets a Christmas bonus. Loyalty deserves recognition." Once Lydia had left, Mason focused on his computer, checking the last components of his plan. By Christmas Day, every piece would be in motion to bring about the total financial collapse of the Winter family and Preston Dawson, and all of it started over being left out of a simple Christmas dinner. Chapter 5. Pawns and Players. 2 days before Christmas, Mason's phone rang with a frantic call from Veronica. "What have you done?" she blurted out immediately. "You'll have to be more specific," Mason answered coolly, gesturing to Olivia, who was placing ornaments on their Christmas tree, that he needed a moment. He moved into his office and closed the door behind him. "Preston's investors are pulling out. Every single one. Someone's making them promises about guaranteed returns on some new development project." Her voice was tight with restrained anger. "I know this is your doing. Sounds like a business issue," Mason said. "Maybe Preston should concentrate on keeping his investors happy instead of trying to bribe my staff." "Don't be coy, Mason. We need those investors." There was a pause, then her tone softened. "Look, I'm sorry about excluding you from Christmas dinner. Olivia is, of course, welcome. Please come, both of you." The sudden change in attitude was exactly what Mason had predicted. Under financial stress, they had quickly remembered to include Olivia in the family celebration. "That's generous of you, but we've already made plans," Mason said. "As for Preston's investors, they're free to invest where they see the best value. That's how the market works, Veronica. I thought your new husband was a big fan of capitalism." "This is payback, isn't it?" she snapped. "Not everything revolves around you," Mason replied. "But since we're talking, maybe you can tell me why Olivia's college savings account is empty." The silence on her end was long. "It was just temporary," Veronica finally said. "Preston had this opportunity that would have doubled the money. We meant to return it with interest." "Tell that to someone who buys that story," Mason said coldly. "You took from our daughter. That money was meant for her education, not to bail out Preston's gambling or your father's banking mess." "What are you talking about, gambling? What banking mess?" Her voice had a ring of true confusion. Mason's smile was ice. "Might be time to ask your husband and your dad some real questions. Goodbye, Veronica." After ending the call, Mason returned to Olivia in the living room. "Everything okay?" she asked, adjusting a little truck-shaped ornament, one that reminded Mason of his first startup. "All good," he said. "Your mum was calling about Christmas again." Olivia's smile faded. "Still wants you without me?" "Actually, she changed her mind. We're both invited now." He studied her face. "But I told her we already have plans." Olivia looked visibly relieved. "Good. I didn't want to go anyway." Mason helped her hang another ornament. "No matter. What happens with your mom? You'll always come first with me." "I know, Dad." She smiled up at him. "That's why I want to stay with you." Later that same afternoon, Mason sat down with Victor Harrove at a quiet table by the water. "I've spoken with Russo's contacts in Vegas," Victor told him. "They're set to take action against Dawson right after Christmas, just like we asked. They're also eager to retrieve a few valuables he's been holding as leverage, most notably, a PC Philippe watch that belongs to Harold Winters. Mason arched an eyebrow. Harold handed over that watch to cover his son-in-law's gambling debt. Supposedly, Preston convinced him it was for a business opportunity. Harold has no clue about the gambling. This was unexpected, but it worked in our favor. Make sure Harold gets his watch back directly, with a full explanation of where it's been. Victor gave a quick nod. Consider it done. There's more. Preston's been looking into unloading a property fast, the one he shares with Veronica, my former home. Mason's voice cooled. They're more pressed than I realized. That's not all, Victor said. I've kept tabs on Harold Winters like you asked. Yesterday he made a big withdrawal, $2,000 in cashier's checks from his personal account. Then he moved the funds straight into Preston's business account. Mason's eyes sharpened. He's bailing out Preston's firm with his own cash. Exactly, but here's the twist. The amount Harold pulled matches what had just been put into an education trust for his other grandkids, Veronica's sister's kids. The meaning hit instantly. Harold had diverted money from one set of grandchildren to prop up Preston and Veronica. Rotten to the core, Mason said flatly. Forward this to the Banking Commission's investigators. And Victor, see if Veronica's hiding any other accounts. I want to trace every dime from Olivia's stolen college fund. Later that night, as Mason finalized the last phase of his strategy, Dominic called with another piece of the puzzle. Preston's firm is officially in hot water. They've paused client withdrawals, blaming it on year-end accounting delays. The financial press is already circling. Couldn't be better, Mason replied, and our media partners are lined up to break. The story, December 26th, complete with details of his gambling and the loan from Harold Winters. It'll land right as the commission ramps up their review. Mason gave a satisfied nod. Have a photographer at the Winters place on Christmas Day. I want cheerful family snapshots to run next to the headlines about their downfall. The next day, Christmas Eve, everything clicked into place. Mason's attorney confirmed they'd A. filed charges against Veronica for misusing Olivia's college fund, with a court date set for early January. His banker informed him Preston's last major investors had pulled out, and the final win, the shell company had finished buying up all of the Winters family's commercial holdings. Mason's phone rang non-stop all day. Veronica, Preston, Harold, they were all calling, each one more panicked than the last. He ignored every call. Instead, he spent his time making Christmas Eve perfect for Olivia. They held a cozy gathering, with Mason's mom, Rose, his brother Leo and Leo's family, and a few of Olivia's closest friends. They traded presents, shared a catered meal, and spent the night laughing over board games. Not once did Mason glance at his phone or bring up work. When the guests had gone and Olivia got ready for bed, she gave her dad a tight hug. "This was the best Christmas Eve ever," she whispered. "Thank you for always choosing me." "Always," Mason said, kissing the top of her head. Once she was upstairs, Mason finally looked at his messages. 7 voicemails from Veronica, each more desperate than the last. The final one was tearful. "Mason, please, whatever you're doing, stop. My father says his accounts are being audited. Preston's investors are pulling out. We need to talk. Please come tomorrow. Bring Olivia. Of course, we can fix this as a family." Mason erased the messages and made one last call to Russo. "Everything set for the 26th?" he asked. "All arranged," Russo confirmed. "My team will meet Mr. Dawson at 9 a.m. sharp, and they're grateful for the holiday bonus you provided." "Good. Just scare him. No harm. The collapse and the public disgrace are enough." As Mason hung up, he stared out into the snowy Seattle night. Tomorrow was Christmas, a day that would quietly trigger the final act of his revenge. Chapter 6. The Quiet Change. Christmas morning was crisp and clear, sunlight bouncing off the fresh snow while Mason and Olivia opened gifts in their pajamas. He gave her a new laptop for college, novels by her favorite authors, and a small sapphire pendant from his grandmother. "One last thing," Mason said, handing her an envelope. Inside were papers for a new trust fund in her name, twice the size of the one Veronica had drained. "Dad, this is too much," she said, eyes wide. "It's your future," Mason replied. And it's locked in. Only you can access it when you turn 18. Not me, not your mom, no one. Olivia teared up and threw her arms around him. Thank you. They spent the rest of the morning cooking breakfast and watching holiday movies. Just after noon, Mason's phone rang again. Veronica, Harold, Preston. He let the calls go. By 2 p.m., he turned to Olivia. I have to run out for a bit. Business. Will you be okay? Grandma's coming at 4, right? Olivia asked. Yep, Mason smiled. I'll be back before then. He changed into a flawless suit and drove his black Range Rover across the snowy roads toward the upscale neighborhood where Harold and Diane Winters lived. He parked about a block down and called Dominic, who was already watching the house. What's the situation? I asked. Everyone's inside, Dominic confirmed. Harold, Diane, Veronica, Preston, and around a dozen colleagues with their spouses. They've been glued to the front door all day. Veronica looks like she's on the edge. Good, I said. And the photographer? He's set up across the street. He'll catch every moment. All right, I'm heading in. I started walking steadily toward the big Tudor-style house with its warm glow spilling from the windows and expensive cars circling the driveway. Through the large bay window, I caught the scene. Harold holding court in the living room, Veronica staring at her phone like it was about to explode, and Preston clearly into his 3rd or 4th drink. I didn't bother with the doorbell. Instead, I called Veronica's cell. She picked up fast. Mason, where are you? Are you coming in? Look out the front window, I told her. When she did, her face twisted in surprise. She waved, gesturing, wildly at the door, clearly expecting me to walk in. I stayed where I was and raised the envelope for her to see. What's going on? She asked, still on the line. Come inside. I already told you we wouldn't be attending, I said evenly. But I did want to deliver your Christmas present myself. By then, people inside were catching on. Harold stepped up behind her, then Preston. They all stared at me from behind the glass. What present? Veronica snapped. Quit messing around and get in here. The gift is in this envelope, I replied. Inside are 3 things you'll want to see. First, notice of a lawsuit regarding Olivia's missing college savings. Second, proof of Preston's gambling debts, which I've bought up. And third, ownership records for the shell company that now holds all the Winters family commercial properties scheduled for demolition starting tomorrow. Veronica went pale. Behind her, Harold leaned hard against the window, his face twisting in disbelief. What are you saying? She whispered. Maybe ask your husband about his trips to Vegas, I said. Or your father about some creative accounting. Or don't. Tomorrow's financial section will spell it out either way. I placed the envelope in their mailbox and turned to leave. Wait, Veronica called out, her voice cracking. You can't do this. We're family. I paused, looked back at the house where my ex-wife, her lover, and her parents stood stunned. No, Veronica. Family doesn't lie to each other. Family doesn't rob a child. And family doesn't shut out a 17-year-old at Christmas just because it's easier. My voice stayed low, but it cut through the cold air. You made your decision 3 years ago. Now you live with it. I walked away. Behind me, the door flew open, and I heard camera shutters snapping. Preston shouted after me, his words slurred from fear and too much alcohol. Blackwell, you can't just walk away. We need to talk. I didn't look back. The change to their Christmas plans had been made. Instead of me showing up as their financial savior, I handed them the collapse they earned. Back home, Olivia was helping my mother set the table. Everything all right, dear? Rose asked, catching something in my face. Everything's great, I said, kissing her on the cheek. Just tied up some loose ends. That night, as we sat down to our own Christmas meal, a message lit up on my phone. It was from Dominic. It's done. Photos documented it all. The press had been notified about the upcoming story. The Banking Commission moved up their audit to the 27th, thanks to newly surfaced evidence. Mason gave a faint grin before powering down his phone. The chain of revenge he'd set in motion didn't need supervision. Tonight was about being with those who actually mattered. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Christmas dinner at the Winter estate had spiraled into a frantic mess. Harold, Preston, and Veronica were dialing lawyers, financial advisors, and anyone who could help untangle the chaos that had just landed in their laps. But there was no undoing it. The pieces were already moved, and tomorrow the storm would hit. Chapter 7. Day of Reckoning. The morning of December 26th rose over Seattle to the distant growl of demolition equipment coming alive. Mason sat in his home office, sipping coffee and watching a wall of live news streams on his monitors. The headline on the financial network read, "Dawson Investment Firm freezes accounts amid fraud investigation." On screen, Preston was being bombarded by reporters outside his building, his wrinkled shirt and shaken look miles away from his usual polished image. A banner underneath ran, "Firm's collapse possibly tied to principal's gambling losses." Another station was airing a live report from the Bellevue area, covering the unexpected demolition of commercial sites. Surprise holiday teardown stuns business owners. From above, cameras captured bulldozers circling what used to be Winters Holdings properties, now reportedly sold off to international developers. Then Mason's phone lit up. Dominic Rousseau's men paid a visit, the voice said. Preston tried to escape, didn't get far. They caught him in the garage. No rough stuff, just a reminder the debt's due by close of business. They also reclaimed Harold's watch and other items he'd pawned for Preston. And how did he react? Preston completely unraveled. Called Harold right after. Word from inside the house says Harold had no idea about the gambling. Things exploded when he found out the watch had been collateral. Mason gave a quiet nod. The banking commission had just shown up at Harold's bank. Full audit crew. He was already in a closed-door session. As the call ended, Olivia appeared in his doorway, still in her pajamas. "Dad, there's weird stuff on the news about Mom and Preston." Mason switched off the screens fast. "Just some business stuff. Nothing to worry about." Olivia squinted. "They said something about fraud and gambling." Mason exhaled. He'd wanted to keep her out of this mess, but Olivia was too sharp. "Preston's firm is running into trouble," he finally said. "And yeah, it looks like he's got a gambling problem that made everything worse. Does that have anything to do with why you went to Grandpa Harold's place yesterday?" Mason watched his daughter carefully. At 17, she was sharp and mature in ways that sometimes surprised him. More young adult than teenager. "Yeah," he said. "I handed over some evidence they needed to face." Olivia sat down across from him. "Did you cause all of this?" Mason chose his words with precision. "I sped up consequences that were already coming. Preston's company was sinking because of his own decisions. Your grandfather's financial mess was due to choices he made. I just made sure they couldn't keep hurting people." "Me too," Olivia said quietly. "With the college money. Yes, you too." Olivia was quiet for a bit. "So that's why you've been working so much, planning all this?" "Partly," Mason said. "Once I found out what they did, not just to me, but to you, I couldn't ignore it. Are they going to be okay, Mom included?" The question caught Mason by surprise. Even after everything, Olivia still cared about her mother. "Your mom will be all right," he told her. "She might lose some comforts, but she won't be ruined. I'm not out to destroy her." Olivia nodded slowly. "Good. I don't want her to be hurt. I just want her to understand what she did." Mason felt a deep pride in his daughter's empathy, something she hadn't learned from either parent. "She'll understand," he said. "Now how about some breakfast? There's leftover cinnamon rolls from yesterday." As they ate, Mason's phone kept buzzing with updates from his network. Preston's company had declared bankruptcy. Harold had been temporarily removed pending audit results. The demolition of the family's commercial buildings was moving forward, with photos showing up online. Around noon, the doorbell rang. Mason opened it to find Veronica standing outside. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her usual polished look was gone. "Is Olivia here?" she asked right away. "She is," Mason said, but he didn't step aside. "I need to see her." "Why?" "So you can ask her to get me to stop." Veronica's face collapsed. "Everything's falling apart, Mason. Preston's business is finished. My dad might be indicted. They're tearing down our buildings. I just need to talk to my daughter." From behind Mason, Olivia called out, "It's okay, Dad. I'll talk to her." Mason hesitated, then moved aside. Veronica stepped inside. Olivia stood in the hallway, arms crossed tight. "Can we talk in private?" Veronica asked. Anything you have to say, you can say with Dad here, Olivia said without flinching. Veronica's shoulders slumped. Fine, Olivia, I need you to get your father to stop. He's tearing everything down. Did you take my college fund? Olivia asked bluntly. Veronica winced. It was supposed to be temporary. Preston had an opportunity. So yes, Olivia said, cutting her off. Did you ever stop to think what would happen when I needed that money for college? We would have replaced it, Veronica said firmly, even with interest. You have to see, we were in a tight spot. No, Mom. You were in a tight spot. One you created, by marrying a man addicted to gambling and constantly choosing him over me. My voice stayed calm even though my eyes were stinging. You left me out of Christmas dinner because I was inconvenient. You took money meant for my future, and now you expect me to step in? Veronica looked toward Mason, reaching. Please, we can figure this out. I'll make sure Olivia gets more time with you. I'll pay back the college fund. Just stop whatever you're doing. Mason didn't flinch. It's already in motion. The dominoes are falling. Preston's firm is collapsing. Your father's banking career is done. Right now, those commercial buildings are coming down to make room for my project. You planned all of this? Veronica whispered. Every part of it. You waited for the perfect moment. No, Mason said. I didn't plan to act. Not until you kept Olivia from Christmas dinner. That crossed the line. Veronica's expression twisted. All of this, just over dinner? All of this because of years of betrayal, ending with that final insult, Mason said. You, Preston, your father, you all worked behind my back. You cheated on me with my friend. You tried to take my company. Then you stole from Olivia, the dinner. Was just when I finally said enough. Veronica turned toward me again, desperate. Please help me talk to him. I think it's best if you leave, Mom, I said quietly. Dad didn't destroy this family. You did, with every selfish decision. As she walked out in tears, Mason felt a flicker of doubt. Had he gone too far? Then he remembered how I cried when I realized she took my future, and he steadied himself. That evening, headlines broke. Harold Winters had been suspended from the bank, facing criminal inquiries. Preston Dawson had been photographed carrying a cardboard box from his office, flanked by security, and the old commercial buildings gone, leveled into rubble. The silent blow Mason had struck on Christmas Day had started an avalanche, and it was only beginning. Chapter 8. Echoes and Aftermath. 3 days after Christmas, Mason sat alone in his downtown office, surveying the wreckage of his revenge. Winters and Dawson were financially ruined. Preston's company had filed for bankruptcy, now crawling with investigators. Harold had resigned after 2 decades at the bank, likely to face fraud charges. The destroyed properties had cost the Winters empire nearly $30 million, but what Mason relished most wasn't the money, it was the humiliation. News outlets exposed Preston's gambling, Harold's violations, and their links. Photos of Mason standing outside on Christmas Day while the family cowered inside had gone viral. Dominic came in with an update. Preston and Veronica are putting the house up for sale. Your old house. It's listed at 30% under market value. They're clearly desperate for a fast sale. Mason nodded once. And the gambling situation. Russo says Preston managed to pull together a partial payment. He's agreed to a repayment plan that'll keep him buried in debt for years. Good. And Veronica filed for divorce this morning, sources say. She claims she didn't know about Preston's gambling or financial misconduct. Mason gave a humorless laugh. So of course she didn't. She's bailing now that the ship is sinking. Some things never change. As Dominic left, Mason turned to the window, watching snow fall over the city skyline. The revenge had played out more thoroughly than even he'd planned. The Winter family and Preston Dawson were left bankrupt, disgraced, and alone. Still, there was no joy in it, just a cold, steady sense of justice. They'd plotted behind his back, stolen from his daughter, and now they were facing the fallout. His phone rang. Unknown number. Mason Blackwell, he answered. Mr. Blackwell, this is Diana Winters. Her voice was tight but composed. I hope this isn't a bad time. Mason blinked. Of everyone in the Winter family, she was the only one who hadn't reached out since Christmas. Not at all, Mrs. Winters. What can I do for you? I wanted to apologize, she said simply, for Harold's actions, for Veronica's choices, and for the way Olivia was treated. None of it was fair. Mason stayed quiet. I also need you to know I never supported how they treated you and Olivia, she continued. That whole Christmas dinner exclusion, that was Harold and Veronica. Not me. I should have spoken up. I didn't. That's on me. Why are you telling me all this now? Mason asked. Because Olivia's still my granddaughter no matter what's happened, and I don't want to lose her because of other people's mistakes. There was a pause. And because it's the right thing to do. Mason thought it over. As far as he knew, Diana had never taken part in what the others did. She'd always been kind to Olivia, even after the divorce. I appreciate your honesty, he said at last. I won't stand in the way of Olivia seeing you if that's what she wants. That's her call, thank you. Diana's gratitude came through loud and clear. That's more than I deserve after everything my family's done to you. When the call ended, Mason sat still, thoughtful. Diana's apology had caught him off guard, a reminder that not everyone in a toxic family chooses the same path. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Blackwell, Veronica's here. No appointment, but she says it's important. Mason sighed. Let her in. A moment later, Veronica stepped inside. She looked worn down, dressed in jeans and a sweater instead of designer wear, her makeup faint. Thanks for seeing me, she said, sitting without being asked. What do you want, Veronica? Mason said directly. I filed for divorce, she answered. I had no idea about the depth of Preston's gambling or the mess he made with my father. Mason arched an eyebrow. Are you looking for sympathy or help? Neither, she said, meeting his eyes. I just need to understand something. All this damage, Preston's downfall, my father-in-law's collapse, our complete financial undoing, was it really all sparked by leaving Olivia out of Christmas dinner? That's what triggered it, Mason admitted, but the punishment fits a much bigger betrayal. You, Preston, and your father worked against me for years. You robbed our daughter. That dinner was just the final blow that made me act. Veronica's shoulders dropped. So ruthless, she whispered. So final. You didn't just hurt us, you wiped us out. Just like you tried to do to me 5 years ago, Mason reminded her. The difference is I finished what you couldn't. So what now? She asked. Now you figure out how to rebuild your life, without Preston, without your father's name, without a dime of my support. And Olivia, that's her decision. She's almost 18. She gets to decide if she wants to stay connected to someone who stole her future and kept her from her own family. Veronica rose to go but hesitated at the door. You know, Mason, I always knew you were cutthroat in business. I just never imagined you'd turn that on your own family. Mason's expression didn't change. You stopped being family the second you betrayed me and our daughter. Everything after that was just strategy. Once she was gone, Mason turned back to the window, watching as Veronica disappeared into the Seattle snow, a speck in the distance. His phone buzzed again. It was Olivia. Hey, Dad, Grandma Diana just called. She wants to grab lunch soon. Is that okay? Mason recalled Diana's apology. If you want to meet her, that's up to you. I won't get in the way, thanks. She sounded really regretful. Olivia paused. Mom called too. She's moving into a new place and asked if I'd help her unpack this weekend. Mason stiffened. What did you tell her? I told her I'd think about it. Olivia sounded reflective. Dad, I know what Mom did was awful. Taking the college fund, cutting me out of Christmas, all of it. But she's still my mom. Mason closed his eyes. Olivia's ability to forgive was what made her stronger than either of her parents. Whatever you choose, I've got your back, he told her. Just be careful. Your mum tends to put herself first. I know. I'm not ignoring what she did, but maybe I don't have to carry that forever, you know? After the call ended, Mason sat with her words. Olivia was choosing a path of careful forgiveness, not erasing what happened, but not letting it define her either. That kind of clarity was something Mason had never learned. In his world, betrayal had consequences, permanent ones. He would never extend forgiveness to Veronica, Preston, or Harold. What happened to them wasn't revenge, it was justice. That night, Mason went over the final steps of his plan. Preston's gambling debts had been structured to trap him for years with no way to discharge them in bankruptcy. Harold's legal issues were stacking up, with the commission uncovering more violations by the day. The Bellevue development was moving forward smoothly, the land once owned by Winter's family cleared and ready. The silent blow Mason struck on Christmas had spread like a virus, dismantling everything it touched, exactly as he intended. Chapter 9. The Cost of Justice. Half a year after Christmas, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse, watching the Seattle skyline bathed in the gold and crimson of a summer sunset. Behind me, the sounds of celebration drifted out through the open glass doors. Olivia's high school graduation party was in full swing. A lot had changed since that Christmas when I took everything back. The Bellevue project was progressing fast, already earning attention as one of the city's boldest undertakings. Preston Dawson had fled Seattle in disgrace, now working some mid-tier sales job at an insurance firm in Phoenix. Quite the fall from being a big shot in finance. Harold Winters managed to dodge prison with a plea deal, but the price was a lifetime ban from the banking world. His family fortune vanished, and now he and Diana were living in a simple condo in a retirement complex. Veronica probably landed the softest blow. After her divorce from Preston, she snagged a job as an event planner at a downtown hotel, something that fit her charm, but none of her former luxury. She and Olivia had cautiously pieced together a new relationship, with the high, occasional lunch or phone call. I watched it happen with a bit of distance, but I respected Olivia's choice. In the fall, she'd be off to Stanford on a full academic scholarship, her future intact, despite her mother draining her college fund. There you are. Olivia's voice pulled me back as she stepped out onto the balcony. She wore a light blue summer dress and held her graduation cap in one hand. Hiding from your own party? I smiled. Just needed some air. This is your party, not mine. Still, you planned it. She rested her arms on the railing beside me. Thank you for everything. You earned it all yourself, I said. We stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun drop lower over the skyline. Dad, can I ask you something? She asked softly. Something real? Of course. Are you happy with how it all ended? I thought about it. I'm happy you're doing well. Proud of what you've accomplished. Relieved your path is set. That's not really what I meant, she said. I mean the revenge against Mom, Preston, Grandpa Harold. Did any of that actually make you happy? I turned to look at her directly. It wasn't about being happy. It was about doing what was right. They lied, they stole, they didn't think you mattered. There had to be consequences. I get that, Olivia nodded. But seeing what's happened to them since, it's been rough. Especially Grandma Diana. She never hurt us. Diana was never my target, I told her. But she was part of it all. I didn't shield her. And now they've lost everything, she said quietly. Their house, their savings, their names. They made those decisions, I replied. The fallout belongs to them. Olivia didn't respond right away. Then she said, Mom asked if she could come today. I felt my jaw tighten. What did you tell her? I said no. Olivia's eyes locked with mine because I knew it'd bother you, but some part of me still wanted her around. She's still my mom no matter what happened. That hit me harder than I expected. Even after everything I'd done to crush the people who wronged us, I'd put her in a place where she had to choose sides. You could have invited her, I said, surprising myself. I wouldn't have stopped you. Olivia shook her head. No, you wouldn't have said a word, but you'd have been furious, quietly but still. And today wasn't the day for that. She was right. I hated how right she was. Half a year after, taking them down, just thinking about Veronica stepping foot in my house still made my blood boil. The thing is, Dad, she went on, watching you these months, how obsessed you were with revenge, how much you gave to it. I started wondering if it was even worth it. What price? I asked. The part of yourself you have to shut off just to chase it, all that rage and never being able to move on. She touched my arm, soft and steady. You got what you wanted, Dad. You won, all of it. But you're not happier than before. That one hit close, too close. I'd won, sure, every inch, but it hadn't brought peace, just a cold sense of balance. Justice served. and this hollowness I didn't see coming. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness, I said finally. I'm not saying forgive her, Olivia replied. I'm saying let go. For you, not her. Before I could answer, Dominic appeared at the balcony door. Sorry to interrupt, but there's something you need to see. I nodded to Olivia. We'd pick this up later. Back in my office, Dominic handed me the newest update. Veronica wants a sit down with your attorney. She's laying claim to some family pieces from the old house. Says they were taken when the place sold. My jaw tensed. Deny it. That stuff went with the property. There's more, Dominic added. Preston's back. Word is he's trying to clean up his image. Telling people your grudge against him had no merit. He's pitching to new investors tomorrow. At the Fairmont. That old icy rage flared up in my chest. Find out who those investors are. Make sure they see the truth. His gambling, his scams, everything. Dominic gave a quick nod and slipped out, leaving me alone with my thoughts, and with Olivia's voice still ringing in my ears. You won, Dad. Completely. But you don't seem any happier than before. Was she onto something? Had this whole revenge mission turned into a cage I built myself? I took them all down, but the anger stayed. Undimmed, unrelenting, always needing more. Laughter drifted in from the party outside my office. Olivia and her friends, caught up in their success and the future they were chasing. Their happiness was a sharp contrast to the cold strategy that had driven me for months. I walked back, watching Olivia as she laughed with her friends, bright and full of promise. She'd be off to Stanford that fall, starting her own chapter. And me? I'd still be waging a war against men I already beat. As the party faded and guests trickled out, Olivia circled back to me. I'm grabbing dinner with some friends, she said. That cool? Of course. I gave her a hug. It's your night. Have fun. After she left, I stood alone in the penthouse, surrounded by the leftovers of a celebration. So I poured a bourbon and stepped out onto the balcony, the Seattle skyline dark and still. My phone buzzed. Dominic again. Preston's investor meeting's growing. Harold Winters is showing up too, trying to reconnect with folks. Who else? I asked. A few names from your old circle, testing the waters, seeing if your stance against Preston and Harold has softened. I should have been furious at the disloyalty, but what I felt instead was a strange kind of fatigue. How much longer was I going to keep doing this? How many more times would I have to crush the same enemies just to feel at peace? Sir? Dominic said when I didn't answer. What should I do? I thought about Olivia, her clarity, her ability to forgive but not forget. I thought about everything I'd spent on payback when I could have used it to build something real. Nothing, I said. Do nothing, sir. Dominic sounded thrown. Let them have their meeting. Let them rebuild. It's irrelevant now. With all due respect, if they start gaining ground again, they won't, I cut in. They're finished, Dominic. Whatever they try to build now, it'll never be what they had. I'm done. The revenge is finished. It's time to look ahead instead of getting stuck in what's behind. After hanging up, I stood by the window, eyes fixed on the city glowing beneath me. The ones who crossed me were finished. My daughter was doing well. My business had never been stronger. Maybe Olivia had a point. Maybe vengeance doesn't just take from the people you aim it at. It takes something from you, too. The anger never really leaves. The past doesn't. Stay buried no matter how deep you put it. I knew I'd never forgive those who betrayed me. That's just not who I am. Preston and Harold were out of my life for good. Veronica, too. They would carry the fallout of what they did forever. But maybe, for Olivia's sake and mine, it was time to shift my drive towards something that builds, not burns. Maybe letting the chill of revenge settle was the first step towards something warmer, something better. As I took the last sip of my bourbon, I made up my mind. What I set in motion during Christmas had wiped out everything that needed to go. There was nothing left to wreck. It was time to start over and build something worth keeping. When Olivia got home that night, she found me at my desk, not scheming, not counting enemies, but going over blueprints for a new medical research center, planned for the site where the Winter estate used to stand. Still working? She asked from the doorway. Just looking at some plans, I said. How was dinner? Good. She gave me a long look. You seem different. I paused. I've been thinking about what you said, about letting things go. Her eyes lit up, just a little. And you were right. Saying it felt easier than I thought it would. The revenge is done, now I need to build something new. Olivia stepped over and hugged me tight. I'm proud of you, Dad. I hugged her back, knowing some things in me would never change. I'd never be the man who forgives betrayal. That part of me was carved in stone. Preston, Harold, Veronica, they were never coming back into my world. But maybe I could be the kind of man who, once revenge was done, could turn the page. Not for them, but for me, for Olivia. Somehow she had walked through the fire of everything her parents put her through and come out wiser than I ever was at her age. The quiet move I made at Christmas had done what it needed to do. Now it was time for a new kind of move, one that looked ahead. For Mason Blackwell, that had to be good enough. This is where the story wraps up. Drop your thoughts down in the comments. Appreciate you sticking around. If this story hit home for you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Tap the video on your screen, and I'll catch you there.